Good morning and welcome back to BIFA TV, your daily dose of industry information. Today's episode is What the Papers Say, and we're joined by Ian Matheson for this week's headlines. So, Ian, thank you so much for joining us this morning. How are you?
I'm not too bad, thank you, Brooke, and I hope you're the same.
Yep, no, all good, thank you. So, what news have you got for today's episode?
Oh, quite a lot again this week, Brooke, I'm afraid.
Okay.
Last week's budget, obviously, the government's
Yeah.
Heathrow expansion decision, new global air cargo data, the latest update from Drury's World Container Index, and the ongoing rumours about a return to Red Sea transits.
Right, okay, so there's a lot to unpack. So, I think we start at the top with the budget. I mean, it was probably the biggest news to come out of last week.
Yeah, it was certainly a lot of speculation for quite a
Mm-hmm.
long time before it happened. There were some positives, of course.
Hmm.
The government will retain the 5p fuel duty cut until August 2026.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be welcome, especially for those people who are already battling with high operation costs.
Yeah, and there's also the continuation of the full expensive expensing for the capital investment, which
Yes.
also supports fleet modernisation and infrastructure upgrades, of
Mhm.
course.
And of course, one of the other big things that we saw in the budget was the future removal of the de minimis as well, wasn't it?
Yes, that's right. That's the exception for goods that are valued under £135, and
Hmm.
it sort of helps to level the playing field for UK businesses that are competing with online platforms.
Yeah.
And of course, the budget also includes a new internal market package for Northern Ireland to improve post Brexit trade flows with Great Britain.
Hmm. Yeah, I know it'll be much needed support, especially for those businesses who are still trying to get a handle on the new environment between the two.
Absolutely, Brooke. Yeah, but the budget brings challenges, of course, too. The removing the de minimis threshold
Hmm.
will create new customs workloads, of course.
Yeah. And on top of that, I mean, you've got to take into consideration not only the increased cost, but also the border pressure that that's going to bring.
Yeah, that's right. And I think that's why BIFA is quite relieved that the implementation has been delayed until 2029, which gives businesses and BIFA members time to prepare.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. And I know we also had some new SPS measures as well, which are going to cut the red tape around that kind of food import.
That's right, yeah. But I also think BIFA remains very concerned about the fuel duty cut being reversed from September 2026. Because, of
Yeah.
course, combined with tax increases and rising employer costs, there's a real fear of weakened consumer demand and reduced trade volumes.
Yeah.
And as you know, Brooke, as always, BIFA says it's ready to work with the government to help members prepare for the changes ahead that have been forthcoming from the budget.
Yeah, of course. As and when we get updates, I know we'll circulate them as always to our members. And of course, we're talking about last week's news. Another big thing that came out was about the Heathrow expansion. The government chose their preferred scheme, didn't they?
Yeah, they have, yeah, and BIFA welcomed the decision. The
Yep.
BIFA's Director General, Steve Parker, called it the first step in the latest leg of a very lengthy journey. He
Yes.
also stressed the need for swift planning approvals, ideally before the end of this Parliament, to meet the
Hmm.
2035 operational target.
Yeah. And of course, they're going to need support from every party to make sure that they hit that deadline, aren't they?
They are, yeah, but I'm not holding my breath. Anyway, staying with air, October was a record month. Global
Hmm.
demand rose 4.1%, capacity increased 5.1%, and load factors dipped slightly.
Right. Okay. So, how did the key trade lanes? How did they perform?
Well, on the Asia North America trade lane, that fell 1.4%, but the
Hmm.
Europe Asia trade lane climbed 11.7%,
Right.
and the intra-Asia leg that rose 9%, whilst Middle East to Asia increased 11.5%.
Right. Okay. And how did the airlines perform?
Well, again, that varied by the region. There were
Hmm.
gains for the Asian, European, Middle East, Latin American, and African carriers, and declines for the North American carriers.
Right. Okay. So earlier as well, you mentioned the World Container Index. So what's been the movement with that?
Well, Drewry's latest composite world container index shows a 2% weekly decline, and that's
Hmm.
brought the global average to $1,806 per 40-foot container last week.
Yeah, I know the report said that that's most likely due to kind of the reduced rates on the Trans-Pacific, but also the Europe-Asia route.
Yeah, the Shanghai to New York part of the index fell 6% to
Mhm.
$2,735, and the leg from Shanghai to Los Angeles dropped 4% to just over $2,000 per 40-foot equivalent unit.
Mhm.
And Drury actually said it expects a further slight softening as blank sailings reduce and capacity increases this week.
But I know the carriers are starting to push back a bit on that though, aren't they?
They are indeed, Brooke. Yeah, they are attempting to raise the FAK levels from the start of this month to strengthen rates before the annual contract talks.
So when we're kind of looking at a market as a whole, other than the rates, are there any kind of other pressures that are affecting it?
Yeah, there are, Brooke. There's some operational disruption which is adding
Mhm.
pressure. There's been a national strike in Belgium, which has caused heavy congestion at the port of Antwerp,
Yeah.
and that's expected to worsen as and when some carriers reroute via the Suez Canal.
Mhm.
That congestion, of course, may to lead to longer delays and upward pressure on spot rates.
Yeah, of course. When we're looking kind of further into the future, are there any kind of longer term pressures?
I think Drury forecasts a weaker supply-demand balance over the
Mm.
coming quarters, especially if the Suez transits normalise and more capacity returns to the market.
Yeah, of course. Well, it'll be one to keep an eye out on. So, have you
Yeah,
got anything else for us for this week?
yeah, and that is in fact about the Suez Canal. Last
Okay.
week, Maersk denied reports that it is set a timeline to resume services through the Red Sea and the Suez Canal shipping route.
Right. Okay. What did they say?
Well, it issued a customer advisory saying that the safety of crewed vessels and cargo remains its top priority,
Yeah.
and it's currently has no specific timing to change the Gemini East-West network to sailing through the Red Sea. The media reports that caused this caused Maersk to issue the advisory actually said came from the Suez Canal Authority. They released a statement that Maersk had signed an agreement to resume sailings through the Suez Canal by early December 2026.
Right. Okay. So, I mean, a little bit confusing there. I guess I can see where that confusion and that statement's come from.
Yeah, it is confusing, but from what I've read, actually, the agreement was an extension of an existing agreement and involved limited trial-based Red Sea transits.
Right. Okay. So, not the full scale return just yet, then.
No, it doesn't. I don't think so. No.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you, Ian, as always, for this update. I know that our members they'll find it of use.
That's a pleasure as always, Brooke, and I hope they do, and we get a good number of viewers.
Mhm. The links to all of the articles and the reports that we've discussed in today's episode will be in the description as always. That's all for today's edition of BIFA TV, your daily dose of industry information.